Hello, everyone. It is my delight to be presenting today a mini bio of a man I so admire, John Randolph Price. My name is Patricia Wagner, and this man, John Randolph Price, I grew to know not personally, but through his writings. At first, through his world healing meditation, that is a profoundly beautiful visionary prayer that is said globally every New Year's Eve in sync with noon Greenwich time. It was New Year's Eve 2024 when, after reading the World Healing Meditation on New Year's Eve, I really took a close look at the words to that. And I thought, oh my gosh, what consciousness must have written this beautiful prayer? To me, it describes heaven on earth better than anything else I've ever read. So for the next few days, at the beginning of 2025, I dove into finding out more about John Randolph Price. I ordered all of his books, and this is what I discovered about him. He is a modern-day practical mystic. He lived from 1932 to 2014. He was 82 years old when he passed away, and that was from a fall. He met the love of his life, Jan, while in his teens, and they were married over 50 years. He began college, a small college, on a track scholarship, but shortly into his college days there at that small college, he joined the Air Force, and he was transferred to Germany, in which he spent 3 years. He won lots of track awards during that time. After his service, he came back to the United States and attended the University of Houston. In 1955, he earned his bachelor's in radio and television, and from there, his career took off. He became executive vice president of a Chicago advertising and public relations agency and was one of their top execs for many years. Then he moved to a different company, but he was president and CEO of a Houston-based marketing agency. During those times in those corporations, he won the 1962 National Who's Who in advertising, and in the 1970s, he won several Grand Prix awards in advertising. Then he was approached by a person who wanted to sponsor him in his own private company. He took him up on that offer, leaving his lucrative position. And in the very first year of having his own company, he generated over $250,000 in revenues. John Randolph Price wrote and produced a series of documentary films for the U.S. Department of Energy and received special commendations for excellence. In the preface of his very first book, The Super Beads, John Randolph Price wrote this. On a Friday evening in January 1967, I picked up a book of a client of mine, and even though I had read it before, this time I really paid close attention to what was written. The author was discussing man's relationship to God. He said that God wants man to be happy, that it is God's will for man to be successful, prosperous, and totally fulfilled, and that nothing will be impossible to man once he learns to cooperate with his inner resources. This was a new realization for me, and I thought about it all weekend. He says, I know I was guided to pick up that book. And when I left for the office on Monday, I asked my wife to go to the library and check out any books she could find that might give us more insight into this new idea of man's relationship to God. When I came home that night, there was a stack of metaphysical books on the table. The thoughts that he and Jan derived that stimulated them and inspired them, he wrote down. Now, these are just a few of them that he has written in his book. Here's one of them. Whatever you affirm and accept from within will become a part of your outward experience. This is the secret and the miracle. The only limitation that man has is the limitation that he sets for himself. Here's another one. Make a list of what you want in life. Claim it as your own. Visualize the experience of having the fulfillment of your desires. Affirm that it is done and give thanks. Then stand by for a miracle. So we started making our lists, and I say we because my wife enthusiastically joined me in this exciting adventure. We worked on our desires daily, imagining what we wanted in every detail and affirming that all the good we desired was now coming into visibility. Within 2 months, things started happening. And they did. One by one, they manifested in their lives. I mean, really marvelous things. But then, as time went by, they began to disappear. This is what John realized. He said, I learned after the fact that I had tried to apply the superpower to the material world without first establishing the proper consciousness for what I desired. This jammed the circuit, so to speak, and the surge that had no place to go except through my old thought patterns of insufficiency, selfishness, impatience, and uncertainty, which I thought were dead and buried. In a sense, these unconscious or semi-conscious patterns were stirred up and called back into action to serve as outlet points for the energy flow. Then John came to this realization. Everything you have and do is strictly in accordance with your consciousness. Emmett Fox was one of his mentors. He says, Emmett Fox once said that the explanation of all your problems can be summed up in this one statement. Life is a state of consciousness. I was relying on mental work rather than hooking up with the dynamo within. I immediately began to work on my consciousness with more comprehensive ideas based on the dynamics of truth. That's truth with a capital T. And the outer scene did change for the better. As within, so without. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But at one point in time, I gave up this project completely, saying to myself that if I couldn't prove the principles in more spectacular fashion, I certainly was not qualified to try to tell others how to reach the high road to freedom. And something within said, what's right with you? That's the kind of question that makes you think. And so I did, about the real positives in my life. He thought about his marriage of 24 years at that point and how beautiful it was. His two amazing daughters, Leslie and Susan, his close friendships, his stellar career. And both Jan and he were experiencing radiant health. He writes, I continued with the list, and when it was completed, I saw all the good things that I had really just taken for granted. And my higher self said, you should acknowledge what is right with you every day, and the good will grow. I responded, sometimes it is difficult to acknowledge the good when my mind still sees incompleteness and imperfection in many areas of my life. My higher self countered, if you wait for perfection, the purpose of this book will not be fulfilled. So I asked, what is its purpose? To reveal the truth that every man and woman on earth is more than a human being, that each has the gift and may rise above all limitations of mind, body, and affairs. As the fulfillment you are seeking is found, By rising in consciousness, you will be demonstrating the truth, and as you share these experiences with others, and as they share their experiences with you, you will grow together. Call your group Quartus. It is not to be a church or a religion. It is to be a foundation for continued research and communications on the reality and the truth of man and his world. It is to be a platform for the free exchange of ideas, for opening minds, for sharing and growth. Now, get on with your book. And so Quartus was born. And by the way, the word Quartus is defined as the elevating of the two phases of man, the head and the heart, to the plane of spiritual wisdom and love, and the uniting of them in consciousness. That describes the divine two-step to me. In 1981, John and Jan Price formed that nonprofit, the Quartus Foundation for Spiritual Research. He and his wife Jan were the originators of the World Healing Meditation that began on December 31st, 1986, with over 500 million participants worldwide. Now remember, this was before the internet. This Global Mind Link event has continued every year at noon Greenwich time on December 31st, when people around the world say this visionary prayer with feeling while envisioning its words. And I can't help but believe that that first time that they organized the 500 million people in this Global Mind Link of saying the World Healing Meditation on New Year's Eve in 1986, that didn't create a field that might have influenced very strongly the creating of the harmonic convergence the very next year in August of 1987. From 1981 to 2003, John Randolph Price wrote 18 nonfiction books, which included The Super Beings, which was his first book in 1981, and then it was followed 3 years later in 1984 by the Planetary Commission. That Planetary Commission, it's obvious how much John Randolph Price worked on his own consciousness, because the difference in the super beings versus the Planetary Commission is obvious in consciousness. He went on to write such amazing books as The Abundance Book in 1986, Practical Spirituality that same year, and the following year, A Spiritual Philosophy for the New World, and many, many other books. The Planetary Commission, by the way, is available for free on his website, johnrandolphprice.com. Please take advantage of downloading that ebook. It contains also the Commission Workbook on Self-Mastery. It's a phenomenal book. You can also, on that website, obtain the words to the World Healing Meditation, and I do wish that everyone will join in again on at least New Year's Eve at noon Greenwich time to say that, so we create that global mind link as John and Jan intended it to be said. John Randolph Price was definitely a modern-day practical mystic. And what I love the most about reading about him and learning about him is that he wasn't born a saint or a sage or a prophet. He earned those stripes of becoming a practical mystic. He learned it through the spiritual work he did. He learned it by applying, researching, studying in spirituality and metaphysics, and then applying those spiritual practices into his life. And of course, Jan did the same. And so together they grew in consciousness. He became a conduit for spirit in service to humanity. Now, I mentioned to you the awards that he received in business, but that was just a drop in the bucket to the awards that he received on a national and international level in spirituality and metaphysics and in New Thought. In 1986, he received from Unity the Light of God Expressing Award for his and Jan's bringing the World Healing Meditation out on New Year's Eve. In 1992, he won the Humanitarian Award from the Arizona chapter of the International New Thought Alliance. In 1994, he won the International Joseph Murphy Award from INTA, the International New Thought Alliance. And in 2007, he was named one of the top 500 visionaries through the Visionary Project in England. In 2009, both John and Jan Price were awarded the Torchbearer Award from the International New Thought Alliance World Congress. John received an honorary doctorate in 2001 from the Emerson Institute, and 2 years later, he was awarded another honorary doctorate from the Holmes Institute. The Quartus Foundation itself also received many awards. There are so many passages in his books where I see his words as predictions of the outcomes that people will experience if they practice the Divine Two-Step. The Divine Two-Step is this: aligning our minds with the divine all the time while anchoring to the feeling of gratitude in our hearts all day, every day. I would like to present some slides for you to see that have quotes on them so that you can read along as I read them. These quotes have been selected because I feel they were really John, perhaps preconceiving the fact of such a practice as the Divine Two-Step. You'll see what I mean when you hear the quotes. And the last slide you will see is a special invitation from me to you to join the 7-day Heart-Centered Gratitude Experiment on January 5th through the 11th of 2026. It will go into further detail explaining how the Divine Two-Step concept was created, along with the 3 modern-day revelations from Spirit which inspired it. The 7-day experiment is offered by Love Offering, and you'll see on the slide how to register for it. I do hope you will join us. The first quote is from John Randolph Price's book, Practical Spirituality. He says, "The massive illumination into the race consciousness will be made up of individual lights. So isn't it time now for all of us to get turned on? We are spiritual pragmatists, which means that we seek spiritually practical approaches to meeting our personal challenges and solving the problems of the planet." Well, that's what the Divine Two-Step is all about. The second quote actually addresses step 1 of the Divine Two-Step, aligning our minds with the divine all the time. "If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." This statement is a secret message, in that the truth of it is glossed over and ignored by the masses of humanity. If your concentration is on spiritual truth, your whole nature will be full of light. And what is your whole nature? It is consciousness. The bodies of consciousness represented by the spiritual, mental, emotional, and etheric combined, your whole energy field as an individualized, undivided conscious being. A one-pointed focus on that which is true and real will purify consciousness and open it to receive more and more of the greater light, which leads ultimately to the final awakening. That quote is taken from A Spiritual Philosophy for the New World. This next quote, to me, addresses step 2 of the Divine Two-Step, anchoring to the feeling of gratitude in our hearts all day, every day. John wrote, "Begin each day, even before you get out of bed, by expressing loving gratitude for all the good in your life, for the everywhere present activity of God. Even the most destitute and desperate can always find something to be thankful about, and this you must do, for it is of critical importance. By daily counting your blessings, a vibration of love and joy will begin to move through your consciousness, calling for all the good in your life to grow and multiply. Remember that gratitude not only eliminates negative patterns caused by ingratitude, but it also works with the law of attraction to bring to you that which has already been tagged with your name. For instance, the good that your spirit has already manifested for your life more abundant, but which your lower vibration has repelled. That quote is also from A Spiritual Philosophy for the New World. This next quote is from the Planetary Commission. Remember that ebook that's available on johnrandolphprice.com. John wrote, "As your thinking and feeling natures move up in a different coordinate in your energy field, you take on the consciousness of the higher soul, and the dark energies of the lower self are transmuted. And while there were two states of consciousness before, duality, now there is only one. When you are in this spiritual vibration, you are literally in tune with the infinite, because the infinite spirit of God dwells in that vibration. In this higher consciousness, you are fully aware, you understand, and you have knowledge of the living Christ of your being." What a quote. Wow. And then the last quote I want to share with you is from A Spiritual Philosophy for the New World. "When many people with an uplifted spiritual consciousness are gathered together in mind with a single purpose, the power is multiplied extraordinarily. A giant energy field, a massive thought form is created. A unified consciousness of spiritually minded light workers emerges, which then dissolves the old world. No, not the form, but the idea of the world within the consciousness of the group energy field. Then what is seen out there reflects that consciousness, for the mortal consciousness will have been transmuted, and a new earth and a new civilization will emerge." That's the purpose of the divine two-step, to condition our minds and our hearts in coherence, to raise our vibrational field, raise our consciousness that then goes out unabounded. And as we rise in consciousness, the whole global field rises as well. That's what John and Jan's intention was for the World Healing Meditation, and that is what is available to us by conditioning our minds, our bodies, our emotions with the divine two-step. So this last slide is how you can register to join us in the 7-day Heart-Centered Gratitude Experiment. It's just one email a day, January 5th through the 11th, 2026. You can register at graceunlimited.com. You also can join our private Facebook group. Just request to join. Its name is Living in Heart-Centered Gratitude. It has been my privilege to describe a phenomenal man of the last century who contributed so much to raising consciousness. Even though he began his consciousness work with his wife Jan in the latter half of the 20th century, I really believe it is now that his work will be discovered as the beautiful, treasured legacy he left for all of us to find. Thank you so very much for your time today, and bye for now.